There are several organizations that come out and get people to come and plant native flowers, collect seeds, and remove invasive species. So I like to come out here and assist them with removing the larger invasive species like this mulberry here or buckthorn. At this point, what I like to do most is chop down trees. To be a part of nature has always been the most ideal for me. It feels remarkable. Growing up in the south side of Chicago and not spending a lot of time in the forests that we have here, it's pretty interesting that we have so much nature available to us and we're kind of blind to it. Our children are missing out on a great opportunity. You know, we have to start opening the door for people to see that there's more down here than just a bunch of factories or leftovers.
I was born and raised in East Side. The demographics of the East Side, I believe, mostly consist of Mexican immigrant families. For the most part, it's like lower middle class. Well, this is the room where we had our first SIA event for SIA, Southeast Youth Alliance, or SIA. Our mission is to amplify opportunities and develop the next generation of community leaders in the Southeast Side. This is where we had our Youth Ideas Lab. The Youth Ideas Lab was just a conversation about the community.
This community, the southeast side of Chicago, is made up of several small communities and primarily was a heavy steel industrial corridor. At one time, when we were in the heyday of steel production, most people were making money somehow based on those factories. As those factories started to die out, we had to readjust ourselves and find a new way to make a living. And even though generations past have long stopped working at these mills, are suffering the consequences of the poison levels in their soil contaminants, just allowing their children to go out and play in the backyard, being concerned about the water that they drink in their homes. For a long time, even just as those mills were closing, we had one of the highest asthma rates in the United States. So the industry has had lasting health challenges for many people in this community. This is an ongoing fight though. We have still been kind of stagnant in this little grasp on the leftover vestiges of industry. The pet coke that sat here uncovered for years had a chance to fly around through heavy winds. So you would have pet coke on the window ledges of homes more than a mile away from the piles. The challenge is manganese being shipped from other places and stored here in this community. We have trucks and barges that are bringing it into the community. You're obviously going to have an opportunity for some of it to be left over or blown away or dropped along the wayside.
Now, we've grown up with those industries on the river. There's just a disconnect between them operating and the effects of their operations on people. They didn't care about covering the pet coke mounds for years until people started noticing that, man, people who live here are getting sick. So I would define the issues of contemporary environmental justice in the Southeast Side as environmental racism, simply because this is a majority Black and brown neighborhood. But I think, like, as young people now that we're becoming more aware of where we are and who is present in our neighborhood. I mean, the green spaces here in Chicago, I mean, in the Southeast Side of it, I want to continue to take advantage of it and use it to my benefit.
When I was out in the woods, I was primarily focused on looking for buckthorn and mulberry. Buckthorn was introduced to be a longer lasting green plant. The challenge with buckthorn is it grows a lot faster than the native species, so it'll actually kind of cover up and crowd them out.
So it's a unique little ecosystem that comes together on the south side of Chicago. I think a lot of people are not aware of the value in what we have here. So I believe that it's important for the east side to have a stronger connection and commitment to preserving the longevity of that treasure.
The way I look at the forestry is a chance to build value by what I can see. That instant gratification is so important, I think, to a younger generation.
I grew up looking at those coal hills, looking at those factories. I grew up watching those mountains continue to grow, and you start to become complacent to it.
If I can get a few younger people out there removing some trees that I show to be not native and why, and then adding native species, and they get to watch these trees grow, they get to watch flowers grow, the impact that they put in the community.
When I first started, I wanted to have volunteer days at Eggers, but what it turned into was trash pickups, trash cleanup, cleaning greens under the Skyway. What better way to literally make your community better than to just clean it up? We want to keep doing the cleaning greens because you can never pick up too much trash. There's definitely an ethnicity part in this. So black and brown people aren't historically exposed to nature in that way. The way the Southeast side in general works is that we have a lot of green space around here, but a volunteer day in the Southeast side here at Eggers Woods is you never see anybody like me. You don't see people that are black and brown at volunteer days. It's hard to get people involved because this kind of connects back to the cultural reason. What I was saying was that it's a waste of time. I think the way that young people understand environmental racism is informed by the way that older folks, not only are we paving our new trails of activism, but we're also building off of what they built, right? Building off of what they've done.
I think it's immensely important to fight this notion that this neighborhood is a dumping ground, because then this just plays off the narrative that the East Side isn't a place to live, isn't a place to grow build your family. This is something that I've been passionate about for years, that I don't want this neighborhood to be a last resort.
For me, rebuilding the forest has a lot to do with seeing the potential of this area that I didn't see as a child growing up. A kid should feel good about where they go home. At the end of the day, they're going to put their head somewhere, and I think that it's important to have some pride in that. Developing pride in who a person is starts at a very young age. I think one of the joys that I get is to be able to walk around this community and see familiar faces. When I go to my son's baseball game, I can see all these little boys that look exactly like their fathers, who I am friends with. It's a very unique piece to be in such a major city like Chicago and to have this small town feeling.
I'm seeing a lot more people with an education coming back to the community. So I think we can have a shift, a very strong paradigm shift from the industrial corridor that we were to the remarkable treasure that we certainly are. People are very interested in bringing back industry to this community, but I think that's the very worst thing. I think our industry, what we should focus on is the longevity and progress of the children in our community instead of building something else for someone else to buy.
Part of my vision for the East Side, for the Southeast Side, is to just continue to revitalize, encourage young people to stay in the neighborhood. And that's the hardest thing to do, because how can you change that when the narrative is that you should get up and leave? What I do want to happen is that people stay here and people invest in the community. Things won't change unless we change it. Well, if we have young people starting to become more active and say more, just the simple fact of saying something positive about the neighborhood starts changing something in somebody else in little ways.